Hello friends, welcome to Let's Crack UPSC CSE English. This is me, Dr. Siddharth Arora. And friends, we are continuing our series. We had started a new series with all of you. It was on popular demand and it's very important for all of us to understand that Lakshmikant as a book is the basic foundation book for polity. And although we had already done the summary of Lakshmikant in our other channel, which is a bilingual channel, since we teach in both Hindi and English language, this channel is catering to the needs of all those aspirants who are not comfortable in Hindi language, and we will be teaching only in English language. In this sequence, we've already made one video for introduction of Lakshmikant and how do you go about reading Lakshmikant. Second, we have started with the history of the constitutions. We are going exactly as the chapters are divided in Lakshmikant book. We will be following the same sequence. Some of those chapters, however, may be divided further for the sake of convenience of us getting the subject being taught in as justifiable manner as possible, because some of the chapters may be lengthy, so I may divide it as per my discretion for the sake of convenience or for your better understanding. So in that same sequence, we are now doing making of the constitution. We are continuing with our historical underpinnings part. So you might as well open the book and watch this video parallelly, or you may read it once after the video is over. Choice is completely yours. But today we are doing the second part of the first chapter, and this is our aim, that we want to be supportive of your pursuit of becoming an IAS officer. Friends, this exam requires guidance. I have been repeating it over and over again. You require guidance every step of the way, and this is our single point agenda at Unacademy. We want to give you a realistic chance of passing this exam, and for that purpose, we have brought many crash courses and several other courses. One of the courses which was not too long in time, we were continuing, was Ultimate Crash Course to Crack UPSC CSE 2020. We were doing this, but does not mean that this is the end of it. Why? Because the major announcement, which is going to be very interesting for all of you, is that new courses are being launched this week itself. So new courses are being launched not only in polity but all other subjects. It will do you a world of good if you join these courses right from the beginning. Most of the students get disoriented when they don't attend the classes right from the beginning. So the opportunity to join these classes is now. The interesting part is also that Unacademy has drastically reduced the prices of these subscriptions. So all my friends who are taking this exam in 2020 or for that matter 2021, you are free to join, and I would advise you to join a one-year course. This one-year course is available to you at merely 40,000 rupees. Join this course with this referral code SIDLIVE. Use my code SIDLIVE and you will get an immediate 10% discount, and this course will be available to you at merely 36,000 rupees. Those of my friends who are appearing for this exam in 2022 or 23 or for that matter even 24, my friends, you're very lucky, since you have more than 2 years to appear for this exam. This will give you a golden opportunity to pass this exam. I will suggest, my friends, take a 24-month course, use my code SIDLIVE, SIDLIVE, and you will get an immediate 10% discount. At 43,200, you will get this course. Now, do some maths, do some churning of numbers. One-year course is available for 36,000. Two-year course is available for 43,200. Only a difference of 7,200. Use your wisdom. You're a wise gang of students, but take your decision now. We are going to continue from where we left exactly in the last video. We had learned in the last video how East India Company came to India, how were the regulating acts passed, then the Government of India Act 1858, soon after the War of Independence, then the Indian Councils Act of 1861, 1892 and 1909 was passed. We finally came to a conclusion that yes, Britishers were doing certain changes in our government structure, but number one, they were very slow. Number two, they were not sufficient. We were far away, far away from any independence, so to say. Now, a question comes to us that how did things change? How did things change so swiftly that we became independent in the next 3 decades after the arrival of Mahatma Gandhi from South Africa. What happened? Now, first, you have to understand that Mahatma Gandhi, nothing taken away from all other leaders and all other people who have fought for our freedom struggle. Certainly, everyone contributed. But what was one very crucial element, which was the contribution of Mahatma Gandhi? Mahatma Gandhi gave us what is called as roadmap to independence. Yes, my friends. Why do I say there's a roadmap requirement? See, if you have to go from one place to another, you have to get two things. One, the direction to reach that place. Second, you must understand where you are. Both the things matter. So I have to travel from Delhi to Mumbai. I have to first understand where am I, and number two, in which direction should I start traveling to reach Mumbai. This was the problem. Where were we? My friends, this is, you never learned polity this way. So understand what I'm trying to tell you. Where were we when Mahatma Gandhi arrived has to be understood in terms of technical details. There is a requirement that we have to understand where were we. My friends, we were at that time not a slave state. So very crucial element is you have to understand. If you look at this in Hindi language, okay, the confusion starts when we try to transliterate Hindi into English. If you look at the understanding in various movies, or if you look at general narrative, we were said to be gulam. The word gulam in transliterated into English becomes slave, but that is not the truth of the matter. Technically speaking, India was not a slave state. Okay, in other words, we had certain legal rights and political rights, but we had legal and political rights under the control of the British government. So it was not that we were a slave state, we were a colony. So very important was we were a colony. The Britishers were controlling us legally and politically. This is very different from being a slave state, in which case I will have no rights at all. We did not have, number one, our free legal and political rights. Whatever rights were available were very few. Number two was that the head of the state of India was not an Indian, not elected by Indian. In fact, he or she was the king or the queen of England. So two things differentiate me from a sovereign state. Number one, I don't have all legal and political rights. Number two, I don't have a head of the state who is an Indian. Now, we wanted what? We wanted an absolutely 180-degree difference. So we wanted a sovereign state, or we wanted to become independent. What will be independence? I will have legal rights, I will have political rights, and my head of the state will become an Indian. So from being a colony, I wanted to become a sovereign state. So the journey was too long, but first you have to understand what constitutes becoming a sovereign state. How do you become a sovereign state? So now somebody had to explain it to us in simple terms so that we could decide or we could talk to the Britishers. The first important requirement from being colony to becoming a sovereign state or an independent state was becoming a federation. Now you would ask, sir, why do you want to become a federation? What is a federation? Federation is the union of small units to form a large unit. Now, why would you form? That question should come automatically to you. Why, sir, should we form a federation? We were already a united country. In a way, yes. In a way, not. Why? Because to become a federation, two kinds of units had to come together. So one of the units that was India was what are called as the provinces, or what are we calling nowadays, we call them as states. So provinces like the Bengal province, Punjab, United Province, and so on and so forth. The second part were the princely states, or popularly called as the Rajwadas. Now, with regards to Britishers controlling us, both of them had two different footing. If you really want to see an example of a colony, that were the provinces. So provinces were actually true blue colonies of Britishers. With regards to Rajwadas or the princely states, things were kind of different. Princely states had entered into an agreement or an arrangement with the Britishers. The princely states were under the suzerainty of Britishers. What does that mean, sir? It means that, please pay attention, within the kingdom, the Rajas or the Maharajas or the Queens or Nawabs or whatever you want to name them, they were practically free to decide their legal and political decisions. They were free to take whatever decision they wanted to take. It was only outside the kingdom that the Britishers influenced their foreign affairs and external defense. So this was very different. As opposed to that, for a province, they had no legal right, no political right at all. This was entirely different from how the Rajwadas were behaving. Rajwadas were within the kingdom practically free. So there were two different arrangements, but Mahatma Gandhi felt that for us to be on the same page, for us to be ensuring that we demand freedom, first of all of us have to come together. In other words, we have to form what is called as federation. So for federation, number one, the Rajwadas have to get out of this agreement, and they had to get out of the agreement or the arrangement of suzerainty of the Britishers. The second one was that the provinces must also become free. In other words, they must have what is called as provincial autonomy. Now, provincial autonomy can be given to you by two ways. Okay, I hope you are understanding. Now you can connect it to the previous video. If you're watching the previous video, it will do you a great good if you can connect it. Remember, there was something called centralization of governance. What was centralization of governance? Centralization of governance was nothing else but provinces losing their autonomy. Now, provinces to get back their autonomy, I'm again saying, provinces to get back their autonomy, they needed two things. Number one was called as division of power. Divide the power between the union or the federal structure that was under the Britishers and for the provinces. Number one is this. Number two requirement was bicameralism. Bicameralism is making two houses at the level of the union so that my voice is heard before any decision is taken by the federal. So this was the two requirements. Number one requirement, give me division of power. Number two requirements is to give what is called as bicameralism. This will ensure what is called as provincial autonomy. So now if princely states lose their or get away from the agreement of suzerainty and the provinces get provincial autonomy, and then both of them decide, then we can form a federation. So under the leadership of Mahatma Gandhi, now we started demanding from Britishers, give us a federation, and federation is made up of these components. So Britishers were constrained to pass what are called as the Montagu-Chelmsford reforms, popularly called as the Montfort reforms. Montagu was the Secretary of State of India and Lord Chelmsford was the Viceroy at that time. So now they decided, so at least on paper, on agenda of them was that they passed what is called as the Government of India Act 1919. This was that they wanted to give what is called as federation. So we spoke to the British and British said, okay, dear Indians, you want federation? We will give you federation. By giving you federation, we will be ensuring that our Montagu-Chelmsford reforms are pretty much shown as in spirit as well as in substance. So we thought, let us read that in slight more detail. Are the Britishers actually giving us federation or are they not? So number one, we realized that instead of division of power, they gave us what is called as diarchy. What does that mean? Diarchy is not true division of power. So the entire powers which were given in the subjects matters were divided into two lists. One was called as the Viceroy's list and one was called as the provincial list. Something of that same order you might have heard or you can recall from what you know now. I hope you know there is something called as a 7th schedule called as the union list, the state list and the concurrent list. We wanted this kind of arrangement. What we got was diarchy. Why? Because the provincial subject matters also had two matters. One was reserved and one was transferred. The reserved matters still stayed with the Viceroy. In other words, provinces did not get autonomy because of division of power. The second part also was pretty sad. Why? Because the bicameralism which they gave us, was merely advisory in nature. Unlike the Council of States which we were expecting, which is for example nowadays called as Rajya Sabha, right? We did not get that part. So neither did we get true division of power, nor did we get a true bicameralism. In other words, you did not get any kind of autonomy at all. The provinces still stayed a colony. This was merely a sham. It was not intended to give provincial autonomy. So although on paper they decided to give, but sorry, it did not happen. They of course introduced more specialized electorate system or specialized electorate system, the one which had continued from the Indian Councils Act of 1909. We expanded. There were certain modifications, certainly. So now out of 3 out of 6 members were reserved for Indians. There was separate electorate system for 6 Anglo-Indians, etc. In other words, there was extension of the separate electoral system, which was earlier reserved only for Muslims. And this was a limited franchise. Please pay attention. This is a very opportune moment for me to remind you that at no given time, at no time during the entire British Raj, did we ever have universal adult franchise given for Indians. It was always a limited franchise. Yes, there were certain changes, like for example, a High Commissioner for India was established. Okay, some powers were given. The Central Public Service Commission, which is the precursor of UPSC, was established. It started working later in 1926, and there was separate provincial budget from the state, from the union, and the state's budget was separated. Now, the Britishers were creating a game. Okay, so just understand this. Britishers never wanted to give you provincial autonomy. They were just playing a game with us. They left, I'm using the word quote unquote, they gave a choice to the princely states. You want to join the federation or you don't want to join the federation. Now, any person with a single digit IQ would understand princely states were very happy in their suzerainty of the Britishers, so they would never leave that. In other words, on the one hand, you are not giving me provincial autonomy. On the other hand, you are not getting out of the suzerainty arrangement. So in both the cases, India failed to form a federation. So very lovely question can be asked, that India failed to form a federation? Yes, it failed to form a federation. Why? Because Britishers were not intending to give us. So you can give the reason. So they went to Britishers, the Britishers went to Mahatma Gandhi and said, Mr. Mahatma Gandhi, we are giving you federation. When Mahatma Gandhi and the rest of the Congress leaders, they really read through the Government of India Act 1919, they thought this was a sham. There was no possibility of we forming a federation because the princely states wouldn't agree and provincials are not autonomous. Hence, Mahatma Gandhi, in retaliation of the failure of Government of India Act 1919, launched what is called as a non-cooperation movement. And it was the first pan-India movement, and it was, although later on it was suspended, but we won't go into that part. But the Britishers were for a rude shock. For a rude shock, they realized that they have made a mistake. Now, when the Government of India Act 1919 was passed, at that time also, they had said that in 10 years, we will revise the Government of India Act 1919. But the pressure of non-cooperation movement was so much that they had to prepone this revision. So instead of 1929 to revise, they revised the entire act in 1927. They've called what is called as, or appointed what is called as a Simon Commission. This Simon Commission, for some silly reason, some funny reason, they did not have any Indian. Now that was very surprising, because the Simon Commission was appointed to revise the Government of India Act 1919. However, there was no Indian involved in this part. However, the Simon Commission discussed everything that was required to be discussed with the Government of India Act 1919 to revise it. They tabled the report in 1930, and when they finally tabled this report, it was discussed in the roundtable conferences, the Gandhi-Irwin Pact, and finally, a white paper on constitutional reforms. A white paper on constitutional reforms was introduced, which led to the formation or the enactment of the most important, the in capital letters, the most important act during the British Raj, which is called as the Government of India Act 1935. For the first time ever, they gave us all the inclination of forming an All India Federation. For the first time, their plan was that we really want to give. Okay, I don't know how much of the underlying they wanted to give, but the fact of the matter is, they gave us true division of power in the form of a federal list, a provincial list, and a concurrent list. You might as well remember it. It is very similar to the arrangement we have now. It's called as the union list, the state list, and the concurrent list. The residuary powers, in other words, the powers which were neither written in the federal list, nor in the provincial list, nor in the concurrent list, was given to the Viceroy. Please mark this. This is an asked prelims question. So the residuary list was given to the, or the residuary powers were kept with the Viceroy, not with the states. In this matter, you should remember the contribution of Government of India Act 1935. So, sir, why did we not form a federation? We did not form a federation because princely states said no. The point here is, even the Government of India Act 1935 failed to form a federation, not because we did not have provincial autonomy, but because of the reason that the princely states said no. So, we failed to get federation formed, but we had a provincial autonomy. So this is, if you notice the entire cycle, if you remember, the Regulating Act of 1773 was the first stage of, or the first step of centralization of governance in India. If you remember from previous video, the Indian Council's, the Charter Act of 1833, or the Act of 1833, was the maximum centralization. 1861 was the first step of decentralization, and the Government of India Act 1935, or if you want to say 1937, when it was implemented, was the last step of decentralization. So when you're understanding centralization and decentralization, you can also understand that in the terms of provincial autonomy or not. So provinces became autonomous practically by this act. The diarchy that was in 1919 was abolished. Instead, a division of power was introduced. Some states also had bicameralism and so on and so forth. But we failed to form a federation. Now, slightly more number of things that you should remember with Government of India Act 1935. We continued with our limited franchise. The Reserve Bank of India, which had been earlier established, was also given legal sanction, and certain other provisions were provided. The Public Service Commission was trifurcated, divided into three parts: Central Public Service Commission, State, as well as Joint Public Service Commission. Now, use some kind of imagination. Go back in time in 1935, okay? And now you know that the Government of India Act 1935 is passed. Yes, passed. You have not been able to form a federation. Yes, we have not been able to form a federation. So if you're not able to form a federation, then you cannot take the next steps towards independence. And that is why we had a major problem. This was a stalemate situation. But then something happened. In Europe, Hitler or the Nazis, okay, they decided to start or initiate what is called as World War II. And in 1940, started what is called as a Battle of Britain. So this time, Britain, which was a so-called world power, was fighting for its own survival. Also, there were tensions building up in the Eastern Front also, with Japan having imperialistic dreams and attacking Singapore, and then later on Burma, which had been separated from India by the Government of India Act 1935. So Lord Linlithgow, who was the then Viceroy, comes to Indians and gives us what is called as an August offer. So without us, first, without consulting us, they make us a part of the war, and then they give us an August offer. Now, what is this August offer? August offer was that help us during the war, join us in the war, and after the war, we will give you dominion status directly. So this was the first time, this is a very beautiful question, the first time ever that Britishers principally accepted the idea that India should be given dominion status. Please recall something, that Simon Commission had also proposed that India should be given dominion status, but for some good reason, the Government of India Act 1935 did not give us dominion status. But this story started and the ideas started building up. Now I'll go quickly as per the process, okay, and which will take you through. So rather than writing it down, since it's not written properly in Lakshmikant, I'll just give you the story on the spot. So 1940, this offer comes. It is followed by the Cripps Mission. Cripps Mission, however, is not able to convince Indian National Congress and Muhammad Ali Jinnah's Muslim League to come on the same page, and Muhammad Ali Jinnah starts demanding what is called as a separate dominion in the form of Pakistan. It was not accepted. Cripps Mission fails. Because of Cripps Mission failure, Mahatma Gandhi launches the Quit India movement. Quit India movement is very successful. Upon that, the Second World War literally breaks the back of British government. Now in 1946, they send what is called as the Second Cabinet Mission of 1946, which somehow convinces Muhammad Ali Jinnah to allow us to go for the elections to the Constituent Assembly. So the elections to the Constituent Assembly takes place, okay, after the Cripps Mission has failed, okay, and Muslim League has not accepted, okay, and the Second Cabinet Mission has convinced. We go for our first elections, right? And by an indirect election, proportional representation and single transferable vote, we make our Constituent Assembly, which sits in its first session on 9 December 1946. On 9 December 1946, our first Constituent Assembly sits down, and now on 13th December 1946, Jawaharlal Nehru introduces what is called as the Objectives Resolution. This Objective Resolution is postponed because of the absence of Muhammad Ali Jinnah, but finally adopted on 22nd January 1947. This becomes the source, I'm not saying exact source, but certainly the inspiration for our preamble, which is adopted obviously on 26 November 1949. Now, when this is happening, parallelly something else is happening. Muslim League is not happy. The entire country goes out into a communal volatile environment. There are riots, thousands of people are getting slaughtered, and the new Prime Minister of England, Clement Attlee, he sends his best man forward. He sends Lord Mountbatten. Lord Mountbatten on 3rd June 1947 gives what is popularly called as the Mountbatten Plan. And for the first time ever, Britishers accept that India, or rather British India, can be divided into two autonomous dominions. One shall be India, the other one shall be Pakistan. The Muslim dominated region of West Punjab, East Bengal, Khairpur, British Balochistan, Northwest Frontier Province and Sindh will go to Pakistan, and rest will form what is called as India. To implement Mountbatten Plan, India Independence Act 1947 is passed on 18 July 1947, and which says that there shall be an end of British rule on the appointed day of 15th August 1947. From now onwards, there will be no Her Majesty's or His Majesty's government. There will be no viceroy. Only thing what was required to be done was that between the time period of 15th August 1947 till the day you have your own constitution, till the day you form your own republic, you will remain a dominion. In other words, you will be having a representative of the crown. Hence, the Governor General, Lord Mountbatten, will be, in the name of the king, will still be the head of India for the time being, till the time that we have our own elected president. So I hope you know, on 26 January 1950, the day we became a republic, that was also the end of our dominant status, and we become independent sovereign state. Very important fact of this part was that each dominion, India and Pakistan, can have their own constituent assembly. From now onwards, no act of the British Parliament can be extendable until and unless you want it to happen. Another important was that now that age-old problem of
alert from Com Apple battery monitor, load battery.
Age-old problem of suzerainty. The age-old problem of suzerainty of the princely states will disappear. Why, sir? Why would it disappear? It would disappear because the Britishers will use doctrine of paramountcy and they will leave this. So they left it, not the princely states, they left it. And finally, till the time period between 1947 to 1950, the Government of India Act 1935 will act as the interim constitution of India. Very commonly asked question. Please remember this part. Till the time you have your own constitution, there was certain criticisms of the Constituent Assembly. Okay, that is, it was not sovereign, since we were not sovereign at that time. It was dominated by the Indian National Congress. It took long number of years to make the constitution, and it was not truly representative because people did not elect it. However, these are very lame excuses, since as we will go into the details of the constitution, it was a very balanced constitution and everything was done according to how it should have been done. Okay. In the next part, we will do salient features of the Constitution of India, when you will realize that these criticisms do not stand the test. Okay. And Dr. Ambedkar and the rest of the founding fathers created a very beautiful and a very stellar constitution. So I hope you have understood the entire historical underpinnings, and this is, you can read from Lakshmikant, it will give you a perspective also, but I have summarized for you so that you really understand the essence of this. This is how you study polity, so that you really understand the essence. Okay. So this is the entire sequence. As I have already told you, that if you are wanting to deal with these subjects even more in detail, then please join us on our courses. New courses are being launched. Don't unnecessarily waste your time. If you want to join, use the code SIDLIVE. Until next time, my friends, God bless and thank you. And in the words of Unacademy, let's crack it.